So, here's the real question. How do dentists like you, who aren't willing to let insurance dictate how you will run your practice, who want to create incredibly profitable practices without sacrificing your time or sanity, how do you create the strategies to ensure your practice not only survives, but thrives in the 21st century? That's the blaring question, and Dr. Steve Schalintz is here to provide the answers. Welcome to Dental Practice Freedom Radio.
What is up, everybody? This is Dr. Steve Schalintz, and I want to welcome you back to another episode of Dental Practice Freedom Radio. I kind of lose track of which episode we're on, but I think we're on number 41, which means we are officially over the hill in this podcast episode. And after this gets released, with the downloads that will come from this episode, we will probably be over 3,000 downloads, which is really exciting for me. Not that I care at all, but it's great that people are listening, even if it's my mom. So just kidding on that end, but no, it's really humbling, and I've had people reach out, and this podcast is a little bit different than most dental podcasts, where most dental podcasts are interviews, and it's the same 35 people that are getting interviewed, which is great, and I love interviewing, and I love being interviewed, so it's not that there's anything wrong with that, but I wanted this podcast to be different. I wanted it to be short. I wanted it to be concise. Most dentists are about 15 to 20 minutes away from their practice, so I wanted you to be able to listen to an episode to practice or back from practice, and that's it. And I wanted it to kind of document my journey and what I'm doing, and why I'm doing it, and why I feel as passionate as I do about the stuff that I am doing. And so, that was the whole emphasis of this podcast, is to give dentists choices and to give dentists some freedom about how they want to practice. I was at a Harris Teeter, which is a grocery store here in North Carolina. And the other day it was 6 a.m. And typically I get there. Sometimes I get a nice coffee. It's kind of, halfway in between. If I'm not in my practice and I'm not in Hendersonville, I'm in Charlotte, and I'm walking. Try to walk every morning that I can for at least an hour, maybe even an hour and a half. It is my way of centering my day. It is my way of kind of reconnecting with myself, my goals, and why am I doing what I'm doing. What was interesting is I was at the Harris Teeter, and they have a Starbucks in there. And there was a guy outside, and he was doing donations. He was running a table. And he asked me, he said, "Hey, sir, would you like to donate?" And, usually in a situation like that, I'm a pretty giving person, but I also can get overwhelmed by all that stuff. And I'm like, what am I donating to, right? So when does it end? And so I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm not interested. And I saw a book on the table, and it was Robert Kiyosaki's Cash Flow Quadrants. And that's one of my favorite books of all time. I like it actually more than Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I stopped, and I said, no, but I looked, and I said, okay, I'm interested. I see this book. It's one of my favorite books of all time. What do you do? And this guy was telling me that he basically runs a program in a school where they teach kids, K through 12, but really like younger children, about financial literacy. And I was thinking to myself, what a cool place, right? And I said, I think kids should get this as early as humanly possible. I think this is phenomenal. And unfortunately, even if I wanted to donate money at the time, I only had my phone on me because I have my Starbucks app, so I don't even have to bring my wallet when I'm walking. So I said, I have no cash, I have no cards, I have no way to pay you. I'm going to leave you my contact information, though. I'd love to donate, and I'd love to kind of do more than just monetarily donate. I'd love to be able to help you guys any way that I can, because I feel that this is something, financial literacy was not something I was taught. It's not something we're taught in school. And I think a lot of it is why most, not just, people that are lower middle class, people that are struggling to get by, I think it's one of the reasons that everyone struggles. I mean, I know as a dentist, we didn't get taught this. We didn't get taught how to manage our money. And I think if you really got honest with most dentists, we are actually in much worse shape financially than the majority of people. We live more comfortably than the majority of people, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we are accumulating wealth and we're happy with where we're at. And in fact, it's usually the opposite. And so it was really near and dear to my heart, but it got me thinking about this podcast and what I want to accomplish with the podcast. And it's been an exploratory phase for me in terms of like, how do I want to structure this? What do I really want to be talking about? What resonates with people? And it came down to two things. So Dental Practice Freedom Radio was designed with one thing in mind. It was to help you free yourself from your practice if that's what you choose. And the reason I bring that up is because I think being a dentist is one of the most fun and exciting and joyful experiences, but can also be one of the most stressful. And I know one thing about dentistry that makes it more enjoyable. It's if you don't have to do it for the money. One of my mentors, Bob Proctor, said, working is the worst way to earn money. And he talks a lot about different income strategies and having passive income versus active income. And I think there's a misnomer on all of that stuff. I always laugh when people talk about generating passive income sources. And I said, do you really know what that means? Almost nothing is passive, right? It's more of, have you built a system, as Robert Kiyosaki would say, it's a quadrant B or a system that you develop that generates cash for you. So there's work that goes into it. There's no such thing as passive income. There's more passive and less passive, but there's no such thing as true passive income. Everything requires some effort. It really just depends on, do you put the effort in the front to develop a system that will generate cash for you, or are you a cog in the system and where you need to be working in order to generate the income? And I was thinking about what Bob said with working is the worst way to earn money. And I think it's one of the reasons that dentists get so frustrated is because if you're in your practice because you have to be, it inherently puts a limit on your joy when it comes to practicing. And so the second you take that away, then you can really start to tap into how fulfilling is dentistry for you as a dentist. So one of my goals was always, whether you're like me or not like me, give yourself the freedom financially to practice as much or as little as you want, and then develop some other systems to generate income. You think about the way that people accumulate wealth, and wealthy people, millionaires. I forgot where I saw the study, and they probably paraphrased from somebody, so we don't even know if this is actually true, but it does give you an idea. The average millionaire has 7 different sources of income. You could argue as a dentist you actually have thousands of sources of income because you have different patients, but you really, if you're in just practice and that's all you're doing, the reality is it's actually going to be very difficult for you to get wealthy, no matter how much or how little or how big your practice is, right? And so you need to generate multiple sources of income. So I really encourage you, and that's one of the things that I'm really going to touch base on in this podcast and future episodes is how do you generate multiple sources of income? What have I done to generate multiple sources of income, whether it's through coaching or consulting or I haven't monetized this podcast, obviously. It's way too small to do that, but it gets the message out. It gets what I want to accomplish out. How do you do things that supplement what you do in your practice so that you can generate these other multiple, sources of income, which free you up to ultimately practice dentistry as much or as little as you want? It is not a good feeling when you have to go to your practice every day in order to make ends meet. It really isn't. And one of my indirect mentors, LD Pankey from the Pankey Institute, just a phenomenal dentist. If you guys ever get the chance, read his book, Philosophy of the Practice of Dentistry, and you would see how far ahead this guy was in his level of thinking. He was quoted as saying, you're never going to be the dentist you're meant to become if you look at your patients like dollar signs. And I think at the time he said that you need to have $100,000 in the bank, and that fundamentally changes the way that you treat your patients. And I thought about that, and it's probably more like $1 million in the bank now. But the reality is that's true, right? Do you look at your treatment plans different when you are not worried about payroll, when you're not worried about this, when you're not worried about that? Of course. Your patient treatment plans are totally different. They might be more extensive or less extensive depending on the situation, but the reality is the way you perceive things changes when money is no longer an issue. So one of my goals has always been on this podcast to really start to dig into these concepts. And this is going to be as we're going. I'm giving you like, where are we going with this thing? What are we doing here? And one of the things we're going to talk about is generating passive source of income, the mindset that's required to do that, how that factors into a practice, and how that helps you create a practice of what I call authenticity. I think that's the most important thing in today in practicing, and it's the thing that is talked about the least, is having an authentic practice. being true to yourself in your dental practice, understanding your core values, what you're about, and then having an office that mirrors those core values. I do not see that very often. I see people talk about it. I do not see people live it. I don't see dentists live that on a daily basis, and most of it's out of fear. The fear that if they do that and they live authentically in their practice, they won't have enough patients to sustain it. They won't be able to do what they want to do because insurance companies won't let them do that. The reality is that is all a myth. I saw something the other day, like somebody called me out and saying something like that, and they're like, well, you obviously aren't in practice. I'm like, yeah, I do. I practice. I have an office. And you know what? You can choose to perceive things the way that you're choosing to perceive it. I'm going to choose to perceive things the way that I want to perceive it, and we'll see who's farther ahead. You can view everything as an obstacle, or you can view everything as an opportunity. I view everything as an opportunity. Everything that I do is structured around the opportunity that is there before me. So a lot of what this podcast is going to cover in the future is going to be talking about ways to generate subsequent income, both inside and out of your dental practice, from just my personal experience, right? I'm not a licensed professional. I can't give you financial advice, but I can tell you that having more sources of income is better than having not enough, and having the right sources of income that supplement what you do is absolutely essential versus having diametrically opposed sources of income. So that's the first thing I really want to talk about. The second thing I want to talk about in future episodes is all about a wellness-based practice and what do you do to cultivate that and what that does for your practice. I'm now down to 3 days a week. I don't have my associate anymore. We went from 4 days, we went down to 3. We started to get back to the foundations of what I wanted to be doing in my practice, how I want to treat my patients. And as a result, the profitability skyrockets almost immediately. And we're producing more at 3 days a week than we were with the associate at 4. So the reality is when you get in touch with your vision of where you want to go in your practice, things move and things move fast. So I do want to touch base on that a lot in these future podcast episodes. What do I do in my practice? Why do I do it? What is unique about it? How does this differentiate me from almost every dentist in my community? And how can you put this in your practice to start to differentiate? I think we're hitting a major crossroads in dentistry right now. You're going to choose which side you want to be on, but you're not going to be able to be stuck in the middle. You will die in the middle, right? That's where squirrels get run over in the middle of the road because they didn't make a decision. You're either going to jump in, get bigger, have multi-owner practice, maybe go to corporate dentistry, whatever the model looks like that's going to be big, mass volume, low quality, just in general. You can't really have mass volume in dentistry and have high quality. I've not seen it done effectively. The flip side is you go the complete opposite. You go much more relationship-oriented, much more wellness-oriented, focus on the highest possible quality, and those patients will find you. And that's the model that I chose to be in. Not that it's good or bad, it just is. I see some merit in both models, to be honest. I'm just speaking from experience for me that as a fee-for-service dentist that is looking at how to stay relevant in the 21st century, I knew that having a large practice or multiple practices probably was not going to be sustainable for me. I think there's a way that it can be done. I think that there's a way that you can have multiple doctors in the same practice, and that actually I love that model, and we'll talk about that model, but I don't personally live that model, so I can't give you advice, but I might get people on this podcast that do, where the owner doctor can do a lot more high quality relationship-oriented cases, call them that. And then you may have an associate in there that may take insurance, and then they offer kind of a practice within a practice, right? So I'm going to touch on a lot of those things in the upcoming episodes. I just wanted to give you a sneak peek of where we're going, kind of like a midway point, even though we're not stopping at episode 80, I don't think, to see where we're going to be going in the future. And so I hope you have a good weekend, and thank you so much for listening. This will be at over 3,000 downloads, which I'm so excited about, and I know it's just going to continue to grow and get bigger, and I'm going to continue to hone this message, and hopefully you resonate with that. I mean, I'm hoping that you're anxious to learn more about how to create multiple sources of income using the skills and knowledge you already have. It's not finding new skills and knowledge. It's tapping into what you already know. And then how to create a practice that's more authentic and more representative of you, and how to capitalize on that and monetize that. We shouldn't be a martyr to our practice. We should make a profit. We should be able to live comfortably, and we should be able to push ourselves and not feel bad about doing that. So that's going to be the focus. As always, thank you so much. Pay attention to some of the things that I'm launching. I'm going back. I have a program called Fee for Service Freedom, which is an intensive 6-month coaching program that I launched a couple of years ago. It was just too hard for me at the time to be able to spend the time necessary with my clients, my coaching clients, to give them the results that they were looking for. It was just too much. But I'm able to go back to that now, and I just love that program. That program is not for everybody, but if you're looking to grow an authentic practice, if you really want to dig into Bob Proctor's work and then understand how to apply that into your practice to create a more fee-for-service oriented practice, whether you already have one and you're looking to take it to the next level, or you're looking to get out of insurance completely, you got to have some certain strategies and tools. And that program really digs into that. So I'm really, really excited to launch that. And then obviously what we're working with Dan O'Rourke and myself on the clinical side of things with dentistry's optimal model and taking that to the next level is going to be so exciting. So we're working on some great things. And as always, it's free of charge if you go to dentalpracticefreedomradio.com. And just as my thank you for checking out this podcast, you get a case acceptance master pack, which can immediately bring more cases into your practice and increase your case acceptance using some little used, well-known, but often not talked about in dentistry skills. So hopefully that's my way to just kind of introduce myself to you and my thank you for you. You can always leave a review or a rating on iTunes, which would be fantastic. And you can always send me a message, and there's ways to connect with me. You can send me an email to admin@mountainskycoaching.com and ask specific questions that you have about any of these episodes or things you want me to talk about. And have a great weekend. Enjoy the World Cup, and talk soon.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode on Dental Practice Freedom Radio with Dr. Steve Schlintz. We'll see you on the next episode.